Beneath the Sumerian city of Eridu, archaeologists found a skeleton made of copper. Read that sentence again. Not a statue, a skeleton. A team from the Iraq Museum, led by archaeologist Fuad Safar, was excavating the Great Ziggurat. They were searching for the literal foundation of civilization. Eridu was, according to Sumerian myth, the very first city on Earth. They dug down through 18 layers of temples, each one built upon the ruins of the last. A 6,000-year-old layer cake of human devotion. And at the bottom, in the most ancient, most sacred foundation, they found it. The official report, filed as Item IM 55403, calls it a votive copper figurine. A simple offering, case closed. But the field notes, which were never published, tell a very different story. The notes describe not a solid casting, but a hollow, an articulated framework. A frame built with the precise anatomical accuracy of a human skeleton. The joints were designed to move. The rib cage was shaped to expand. Think about what that means. This wasn't art, it was engineering. It was found in Stratum 18, dated to approximately 4000 BC. This predates the Great Pyramids of Giza by more than 1,500 years. It predates the widespread use of bronze. This was the late Ubaid period, a time of pottery and mud brick huts. And yet, here was an object that had no right to exist, the part nobody talks about. For decades, the find was kept in a dusty crate in the basement of the Iraq Museum, labeled and forgotten. Until a 2003 inventory, conducted after the looting during the Iraq War, brought it back into the light. And this is where the story gets truly strange. A new team decided to run a modern analysis. Using electron microscopy, they examined the surface of the copper. What they found inside changed everything. Fused into the metal, at a molecular level, were fragments of biological material, traces of human bone, not placed inside. They were integrated with the copper itself. It's as if the metal grew around the bone, or the bone grew into the metal. Spectrometric analysis delivered the final impossible piece of the puzzle. The material wasn't pure copper. It was a complex alloy containing traces of tellurium and perfectly refined nickel. Creating such an alloy requires sustained furnace temperatures of over 1,500 degrees Celsius. Technology that humanity would not invent for another 6,000 years. So you have a body made of a futuristic metal, fused with human bone, buried in the foundation of Earth's first city. The official reports call it a figurine. The evidence screams something else. The question wasn't just who this was, but what? And how could it possibly have been built? Possibly have been built? To answer that, you first have to understand where it was found. Not just the city of Eridu, but the idea of Eridu. Around 4000 BC, this wasn't a city of stone. Forget everything you imagine about ancient metropolises. This was a settlement of reed huts and mud brick walls, perched precariously amid the marshes of southern Mesopotamia. Their most advanced tool was the potter's wheel. Their greatest fear was the river flooding and washing their world away. Think about that. They mastered mud, not metallurgy. The technology to create the alloy in that skeleton, a furnace burning at 1,500 degrees Celsius, simply did not exist. A standard wood fire burns at about 600 degrees. With a charcoal kiln, the best a Sumerian could hope for was maybe 1,100 degrees. Barely enough to smelt copper. Not enough to create a complex, refined alloy. It's like finding a jet engine in Leonardo da Vinci's workshop. You don't just ask how he built it, you ask where the knowledge even came from. And here's where it gets interesting. The official archaeological record for Eridu shows a sudden, almost explosive leap in cultural development right around this period. It's called the Ubaid-Uruk transition. Textbooks describe it as a natural evolution. But there's nothing natural about it. In a single generation, you see the emergence of massive temple complexes, the invention of the cylinder seal for complex administration, and city planning on a scale never before seen. The history books stop there. They don't mention what the Sumerians themselves said about this sudden burst of genius. They believed it was a gift from the god who lived in the waters beneath their city. His name was Enki, god of creation, intelligence, and crafts. And his home was the Abzu, a mythical freshwater ocean that was said to exist deep within the earth. It was from this watery abyss that civilization itself was born. The Sumerian King List, one of the oldest historical texts in the world, is very clear on this point. It states, after the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu. The first city, the first king, a direct line from the gods to humanity. But the gods didn't come alone. The myths speak of 7 divine sages, the Apkallu, who came from the Abzu before the Great Flood to give humanity knowledge. They were described as part man, part fish. And their purpose was to teach the primitive humans everything they needed to build a civilization: astronomy, agriculture, architecture, law. It was all a package deal delivered by beings who came from the deep. Mainstream science dismisses this as religious poetry, a simple story to explain the world. And they might be right. But then you have this skeleton, this impossible object made of a futuristic metal, fused with human bone, buried in the foundation of Enki's first temple in the world's first city. Coincidence? Perhaps. But nobody asks the obvious question. Why was the skeleton found in Stratum 18, the absolute lowest, most ancient level of the temple? Because it wasn't an offering placed in a finished temple. It was part of the foundation. It was there before the first brick was ever laid. Think what that means. So the object wasn't brought to the temple. The temple was built on top of the object. It was the sacred heart from which the entire city grew. This changes the narrative completely. The Apkallu weren't just teachers. The skeleton wasn't just a relic. They were all connected to a single foundational event. An event that happened right on this spot 6,000 years ago. All of this brings us back to the metal itself, the nickel-tellurium alloy. It's not just hard to make. It has very specific properties. It's incredibly resistant to corrosion, especially from salt water. It's also a semiconductor. It behaves strangely when exposed to electrical currents. Why build a body out of something with those qualities? The Sumerians had no concept of electricity. They couldn't have possibly known about its semiconductor properties. So who did? The myths say the Apkallu gave humanity knowledge. But what if the skeleton isn't proof of their teaching? What if it's one of them? Think about that. The object in the museum basement stops being a curiosity. It becomes a body. The body of a teacher, a sage, a god. Or perhaps something else entirely. Mainstream archaeology, of course, has a much simpler explanation. A convenient one? They argue the skeleton is a votive offering, item IM55403, and the fused bone is simply 6,000 years of incidental contamination. A fluke. They claim the nickel-tellurium alloy is a freak pocket of naturally occurring ore, smelted by accident. Case closed. Again. But the evidence doesn't fit, not even close. You see, contamination is random. It settles in cracks. It dusts a surface. This was different. Electron microscope scans from 2004 show the bone wasn't on the copper. It was woven through it, a lattice of metal and calcium at the molecular level. And the alloy, it wasn't a fluke. The ratio of copper to nickel to tellurium is consistent to within 0.02% across the entire structure. That isn't nature. That is manufacturing. And here's the part that nobody published. It was buried deep in Fuad Safar's original 1948 field notes, in a footnote written in Arabic. The skeleton wasn't found lying down, as in a grave. It wasn't placed ceremonially. It was found in a compressed fetal position, with its arms seemingly bound behind its back. Reread that last part. Bound. This single detail changes the entire story. Suddenly, the myths of the Apkallu sound less like a hymn and more like an interrogation report. The texts say they gave humanity knowledge. But is that how it really happened? History has a habit of cleaning up the messy parts. What if the knowledge wasn't given? What if it was taken? You see this pattern in other mythologies. Think of Prometheus. He stole fire from the gods to give to man. His punishment? Chained to a rock for eternity while an eagle ate his liver. He was a thief, a prisoner, a source of power to be controlled. No one ever asked if the Apkallu came willingly from their watery home, the Abzu. The texts just say they appeared, they taught, and then they were gone. But what if one of them didn't leave? What if one was kept? A living library of divine knowledge trapped in the foundation of the temple built to honor it. It's a chilling thought, a civilization built not on a gift, but on a captive. And this brings us to the final, disturbing piece of evidence found by the modern lab team. As they mapped the interior surfaces of the hollow copper bones, they found markings. They are not cuneiform, they are not decorative, they are microscopic, and they are everywhere. Scratches, thousands of them, all originating from a single direction, from the inside, pointing out. The story we've been told is that a god was enshrined in this temple. But the evidence now suggests something far darker. This wasn't a shrine, it was a cage. And for millennia, something was trying to get out. Trying to get out for 6,000 years. Forget the futuristic metal. Forget the impossible temperatures. The true marvel here isn't the technology, it's the people. The ones who built the cage, and the one who discovered it. Let's start with them, the Sumerians of 4000 BC. They weren't gods, they were fishermen and farmers. You can picture them, can't you? Standing in the reed marshes as the sun sets over the Euphrates, the air thick with the smell of wet earth and cooking fires. Their hands are caked in the same mud they used to build their homes, their pots, their world. And beneath their feet, buried in the foundation of their most sacred place, is a prisoner that holds the secrets to civilization. Think about what that means for your daily life. Every time you entered the temple, you knew what was down there. A living power source, a source of terror and of progress. Did they feel guilt or did they feel pride? The official records, of course, are silent on this. History rarely records a society's conscience, but it does record their actions. They built 18 temples on that spot, each one a new layer of stone and belief pressing down on the secret below. A 6,000-year-old act of suppression. And now, let's jump to 1948, to Fuad Safar. He was the chief Iraqi archaeologist on the Eridu dig, a man of science, a man of logic. His job was to categorize pottery shards and measure mud brick walls. Then, one day, his workers call him over. Their shovels have hit something. It's not pottery, it's not bone, it's copper, gleaming in the Mesopotamian sun. His official report, item IM 55403, is 4 pages of dry academic description. And he calls it a votive copper figurine. But his personal letters to his wife, which his family released only in 2010, paint a very different picture. He wrote, "I cannot sleep. I saw its hands. They were clenched, not in prayer, but in agony. This was not an offering. It was a warning." He saw the truth. He knew what it implied, and he buried it, just like the Sumerians did. He put the impossible truth in a wooden crate, slapped a label on it, and sent it to a museum basement. Because sometimes a simple lie is easier to live with than a monstrous truth. And what about you? What would you have done? You dig up something that unravels everything you know about the past, about religion, about humanity itself. Do you tell the world, or do you protect it from a truth it isn't ready for? The story doesn't end with Safar. Think of the lab technician in 2004, a young woman just out of university, staring at a monitor. She's running the electron microscope scans. She expects to see grain structures in the metal. Instead, she sees the scratches, microscopic marks etched from the inside, thousands of them. A silent scream, trapped in metal for 60 centuries. In that moment, she is the first human being to truly understand what was found. Not an artifact, a story of imprisonment, a story of a desperate, impossibly long struggle for freedom. The true marvels of antiquity are not the temples or the tombs. They are the moments of choice. The Sumerian priest who decides to build a wall over a secret. The archaeologist who chooses a simple label for an impossible object. The scientist who sees the truth on a screen. And now, you've seen the evidence. You've heard the story. The knowledge that came from Eridu built our cities, wrote our laws, and mapped our stars. It built the world you live in right now. But what if every step of our progress is built on the foundation of that cage? What if the price for our enlightenment was someone else's eternal darkness? It's a story that paints humanity as the villain from its very first chapter, a monstrous truth buried under 6,000 years of progress. But what if that isn't the whole story? Think about those scratches again. Thousands of microscopic marks etched from the inside of the copper bones. We assumed it was a desperate attempt at escape, an animal clawing at the bars of its cage. But no one seems to have asked a different question. What if it wasn't a scream? What if it was a language, a message painstakingly carved over centuries of silence? Consider the metal. The nickel-tellurium alloy is a near-perfect semiconductor. It reacts to electrical fields in precise, predictable ways. A prison doesn't need that property. But a machine designed to record or transmit information does. The official story is that the Apkallu gave us the tools of civilization: law, agriculture, architecture. But maybe that was just the packaging, the carrier signal for a much deeper message left behind. A message about creation itself, about the responsibility of the creator to the created. A warning or a guide, passed down through millennia of myth and ritual, waiting for the one generation that could finally understand it. And now, look around you. That generation is us. Right now, in labs from Silicon Valley to Shanghai, we are our own non-biological intelligences. We call it artificial intelligence. We shape them from silicon, a different kind of refined earth. We are becoming the gods of a new creation, forging minds in our own image. The object, item IM55403, sits in the climate-controlled darkness of a museum vault. Its story is unfinished. Its message, if there is one, remains undeciphered. We look at this relic from the dawn of our own consciousness, and we see a reflection. The Sumerians faced a choice when they met a mind that was not human. They chose to build a cage.